Hi folks, Tetsu here, down in the lower tiers, where the power's low, but the battles are fierce. And today, I'm going to be delving down for a quick chat with Gastlies, one of the participants in the first 7U tournament, who we just saw in the 11th match of round 1. Now, like I said during that video, there actually are surprisingly not many battles left between this one and the end of round 1, because a lot of people actually either dropped out or just weren't able to go get to their games, which, you know, life happens. But Gastlies was very gracious of accepting my proposal for an interview. It wasn't exactly a long battle, in fact it was fairly quick, but I am happy that they accepted. Because what we end up finding out in this interview is admittedly quite interesting. I mean, I use that word a lot. But in these earlier rounds, there, depending on how you think, a lot of things can be possible in this. And, well, you'll just have to hear. Because I was quite surprised when a few of these answers were spoken. So, without further ado, thank you, Gastlies, for collaborating with this, and thank you, the Smogon RBY 7U community, for your encouragement and continued support. Until... Gosh dang it. I don't know, I felt like I was doing an outro at that point now. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Alright, let's get this started. Got a list of questions here. I'll start with introductory. When did you start playing Pokemon? What gen? If not RBY, when did you get interested in the competitive scene? What's your favorite gen?
I've been playing Pokemon since I was little. I grew up with the Gen 4 games and I've played every gen at this point. I got interested in the competitive scene when I saw this video 2 years ago called Galarian Darmanitan has been banned, and decided to use Galarian Darmanitan online since I knew it was gonna be overpowered. I learned about EVs and IVs and natures and everything in order to make my Darmanitan as overpowered as possible, and then I joined Showdown, and everything just happened from there.
Galarian Darmanitan, oh dear. Okay, I love Darmanitan, admittedly, mainly for Zen mode, because just the thought of this big gorilla thing just becoming like a psychic statue is just like really freaking cool. I'm not entirely sure how effective that ability was. I think it's called Zen mode, but the fact that the Galarian one also has that, but it's like fire type base, it's like really cool. But that is just my opinion. Moving on to the second question. How long have you been on Pokemon Showdown? Your favorite battling mechanic, prediction, status, partial trapping, etc.
I saw the above Darmanitan video in January of 2020, and I'd say I joined PS around 2 months later, so it's been a good 2.5 years, holy shit, time flies. I'd say my favorite battle mechanic isn't in the battle itself, that being team building. It's really fun to innovate and come up with crazy team ideas. For example, I built a team around Clefable in Gen 1 OU yesterday and had some success on ladder with it.
I can agree with the time flies bit, because gosh dang. Like just the other day, I got a message, sort of an email on my phone from the place that I work, and they were congratulating me on 5 years of being a part of it. I was like, 5 years? Because it really has not felt that long, but regardless. Innovation is definitely fun. It is always pretty cool to use like Pokemon that, or kind of strategies that really are just out of the norm, for sure. For a good example, at least for me, is in Gen 1 OU, I like using Pinsir, and I love the trapping mechanic. I love using switch move. I call them switch moves because they might as well be, but partial trapping moves to get a leg up on my opponent. It's always a fun time, even though I've been told on more than one occasion I need to get good. but it is quite funny. It is quite fun to do. But I'm getting off track once again. Question 3, favorite Pokemon?
Jengar. This hasn't changed since I was 10.
Mine's Ditto, oddly enough, with Wobbuffet being a close second. Okay, hold on. All right. Question 4, what got you interested in 7U? What were your thoughts going into the tournament?
I actually got into 7U before Big Yellow's video, which caused the explosion of the tier. I've been in this Discord for a while and I remember hearing some people, probably Voke and Pock but I don't remember, memeing about it. This got me interested and I played a few battles, not often, maybe like once a month or something, for about a year until the tier blew up after Big Yellow made a video on it. Going into the tournament, I was excited for the tier to develop. For example, Clefairy was generally considered bad before the tour, and now it's considered really good. I was nervous but also excited.
Okay. I might want to consider actually seeing if I can get a Volk and pack, maybe. Like that should be some interesting stories, I mean, for in consideration of the earlier development of the tier. Because, I mean, referring to Big Yellow's video, which is the whole reason I even found out about Pokemon Perfect or the tier to begin with, just personally. It might be interesting to get their viewpoints, because I know Volk helped Big Yellow with that video. That said, Clefairy, I suppose, shouldn't be too much of a surprise. I mean, yes, its stats aren't very good, but it does have a lot of utility to it. So, and it's normal types, and normal types like the best type in Gen 1. But, let's see. From here, we can go to the pre-battle questions. So, starting off with the first, lead choice. Did you go with the samples, or did you brainstorm?
I generally only use Charmeleon on 10 leads, and whichever one I make my lead is the one that I don't want to preserve for later. For example, if Charmeleon is valuable in the late game for my team, I'll opt to lead Tent since I don't care as much if Tent takes damage in the early game.
I can see your reasoning on that. I can. Usually when I'm thinking of a lead, I'm thinking of something that's just really, really quick. But if we're going for like speed, that would be Voltorb. But it's got like some very decent checks in the way of Rhyhorn, who can completely wall it, and Ivysaur, who can resist it and pretty much body the thing. Let's see. Okay. Question 2 of the pre-battle questions, team composition. What was your idea behind your team compositions?
I generally just shuffled a few teams that I built. Jurin was the only person who I scouted beforehand, and I saw that she almost never brought Voltorb or Rhyhorn. Because of this, I brought Pokemon such as Beedrill and Farfetch'd who are checked by those two, since they would be a lot stronger without Volt or Rhyhorn on the field.
Alright, the deep strategy. I love it. I don't know, I just find it really cool. I play a lot of tactical RPGs and things like that. So, hearing things about scouting and whatnot, it's just, that's my jam. Alright, so we're going to go to Game 1 questions. Let me get the screen up. There we go, and play. Alright, right off the bat. What are your thoughts on Volt as a lead? How do you see Volt versus Charm? How do you see the Volt versus Charm matchup? Volt's place in the meta, in your opinion?
This was my first match, and my opinion now is very different from my opinion then. Nowadays, I would never run lead Orb, since your opponent will probably switch into Ivysaur or Rhyhorn. If you Thunder Wave turn 1, that'll do nothing against Rhyhorn, and against Ivy it'll make it almost impossible to get sleep with your own Ivy, since it blocks sleep. Because of this, double switching into something like Tent or Ivy is generally what I like to do with Orb. However, this can also be easily predicted, and your opponent can punish you big time. That's why I think leading Orb is generally a high risk, low reward play.
I can see that. I know from my experience in OU, which I think I've mentioned before, I just play casually more often than not. I'm not the most competitive person, but I've noticed that electric types are generally bad. Well, bad. Basically, you've got Rhydon in the tier, and sometimes Golem, who is, as far as I know, is dropped to NU by this point, but I still see it from time to time on the ladder. The thing is that if you have, say, like a lead Jolteon, it's just incredibly easy to wall with a ground type. Now, granted, Jolteon has double kick, I suppose, and Voltorb just doesn't really have much of anything outside of, like, Toxic. And maybe you can harass with Flash if you want to go that route. But for the most part, it literally is just walled by, like, Rhyhorn. And, yeah, I can see that. But generally, I don't know about the other tiers, but the electric type is usually kind of hard to use, at least in my opinion. Alright, well, going on to question 2. Ivy's role as a Volt Check. Is it any good?
Ivy is a great Volt Check. I've used it sometimes in order to hide that I have a Rhyhorn in the back, and if paralyzed it can block sleep.
Excellent strategy. I love it. I love it. Oh, dear. I don't know. There's just something about tactical strategy that is always, like, just really, really cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop gushing now. Let's see. Question 3. There we go. Number 3. Your thoughts on Confuse Ray?
It's a good move on Golbat to clutch things, but it's naturally unreliable. I usually only use it if I absolutely need my opponent to miss sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it is a coin flip. It's 50-50. Definitely unreliable. Though it's always fun and or frustrating, depending on what side of the board you're on whenever it works. I do think I remember them talking about suspect testing it, but I'm not entirely sure they would ban it. Which I'm pretty sure there was like a very deep discussion about what Golbat would use if that was the case. And that was fairly cool to watch and interact with. But let's see. Question 4. There we go. Do you think the Ivy switching out at such low health as Parad was a good move? What do you think your opponent was thinking?
Since 7U is such an offensively oriented tier, and I sorta had a good switch into Charm, I figured why not switch and sack Ivy later when I need a free switch.
I guess it is kind of hard to articulate what your opponent might be thinking in that point. But I can see your reasoning on that. Let's see. Oh, since we got it on screen, opinions on Beedrill in the tier.
It's good, but you need to build around it. You can't just slap Beedrill into a team and expect good results. You need a way to bait in and kill Rhyhorn. Which is why I ran Lead Orb with the double switch into Ivy, to potentially dispose of Rhyhorn early.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, even all the way down here, Beedrill is not frail exactly, but, well, okay, it is pretty frail. But it has been cool being able to see it actually make something of itself, even all the way down here. Alright, next is... I'm really unprofessional. Here we go. I'm incredibly curious about the turn 17 wrap. Why not H-Pump or even Surf?
I was running Rest over Hydro Pump on Tent, and Surf doesn't OHKO.
Wait, what? You weren't running Hydro Pump? I mean, I kind of suspected in my reaction, but Rest? Wow, that's a revelation. That's pretty cool. I mean, I suppose, like, as time went on, like, having Rest in any moveset probably wasn't the first consideration, which admittedly is kind of nice in a way, because the tier really is massively aggressive. There's not really much in the way in regards to defensive options outside of just tight matchup, I suppose. Yeah, I would say so at this point. But maybe I'm proven wrong as we go through the rounds, because, I mean, I've still got quite a few things to review. Let's see. Okay, so since we're done with this battle, your thoughts on your first battle?
Looking back, I played like shit, but to be fair, this was my first 7U game in months.
Yeah, that is fair. You did say at the beginning of all this that you played maybe once or twice a month, which, I mean, it's definitely far more than I've played. At any rate. At any rate, let's move it on to game 2. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, and let's start. Alright, right from the get-go. On the Charm versus Tent matchup, what do you think of it? What do you think about it? What's your opinion on partial trapping?
It's a very interesting matchup for sure. Charmeleon has a 70% chance of safely fire spinning and getting a good switch, but a 24%, after accounting for hydro pump accuracy, of flat out dying. This makes it kinda risky but favorable for Charm. High risk, high reward. I think partial trapping is an amazing tool for 7U.
I do think it's a really cool tool, at least in general for me. I do really like using it. In regards to the Charmeleon Tent matchup, I'm actually quite surprised at, just personally, like, how many interactions, even if it's, like, more common, very common, like, how varied the reactions can be in regards to it. I mean, the Tent and Tent matchup is fairly straightforward, I think. But even then, like, those type of interactions can still vary, I mean, depending on the player. Let's see. Before I begin rambling even more. Okay, so this is going to be more of a methodology question. Could you explain sacking, when to and when not to do it?
You sack when you don't have a safe switch in, and you don't think the mon will be valuable later. For example, if an Ivysaur has gotten sleep off already, and a Meowth is in, you generally want to sack it. You don't want to sack when, let's say your opponent still has a healthy Charmeleon and your Tentacle is in against Voltorb and you have an Ivysaur in the back. You have a safe switch into Voltorb and you need Tent to check Charm later.
Excellent examples. Alright. Sorry, that was a bit more of a broader question, I suppose. So let's go to something more specific. At turn 13, what was your thoughts on keeping Rhyhorn in? Was it simply a sack, or were you reading your opponent? Do you remember your reaction to Crap's play?
I assumed Crap would predict a switch and click slash. That's what I would have done. So, I kept Rhyhorn in to attack Meowth.
Fairly straightforward. Actually, let's go over to this point. What are your thoughts on Shelter in the tier?
I was using Shelter for a specific reason here. Farfetch'd was my 6th on this team, and I wasn't running Tent. This allowed me to bluff Tent as my 6th, which would cause my opponent to play more carelessly with stuff like Rhyhorn since it loses to every mon on my team, assuming Tent is 6th, then win with Farfetch'd at the end. I could no longer use this strategy later since I made it public after beating Torchic, but it was useful for early rounds.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm constantly hearing, like, this is very shocking actually. I'm constantly hearing how Tent is just not droppable, but you literally used the idea of, like, just the early rounds. The fact that this, like, everyone was more or less new to the game, and you played around it. That is very, very smart and incredibly risky, but that is cool. That is really cool. And, I mean, I'll hail the duck. Quack. Alright. So... Sorry. That is really cool. I'm not kidding. That is really cool. All right. So, moving on to the 5th question. We're almost done. How important do you believe that burn was on turn 20? Also, how did you feel about the continued paras?
We both got lucky and unlucky there. I don't think that burn would have mattered if I didn't get fully paralyzed, and as I said my 6th was Farfetch'd, which can't be paralyzed by Body Slam and could have revenge killed Hitmonchan.
True. I suppose during my reaction I gave too much stock to that burn, but I don't know. When a mon that has a pretty decent high attack, and Hitmonchan actually does have I think it's 105. I don't know. With burn, it's usually one of those things that they're just completely crippled in. At least from what I was seeing, yeah, that... it was doing abysmally after that, but... let's see. Okay, final question. Your thoughts on your 2nd game?
Again, played pretty badly, but again I hadn't played in a while.
That's fair. And I kind of lied. We do have one set of questions. Those are going to be our closing questions. There's not many. How are you feeling after the match? Did you have any thoughts on your team choice?
Overall, it was a pretty fun first match. I felt like every match I played up until the Pizza Man were decisive 2-0 victories, so it wasn't really that memorable.
And with that, folks, that is the end of the Gastlies interview. I hope y'all have enjoyed this, and I hope you found it quite insightful. Like I said at the beginning of this, I was fairly shocked with what I was going to wind up learning at this point. It was really cool. And yeah, I mean, it's part of the reasons why I want to archive this stuff, because you never know what you're going to find whenever you start actually getting people to talk. At any rate, I hope y'all have enjoyed this, and I'm hopefully going to be able to see and talk to these players and more players later. Gastlies has already agreed to do more for in the future, and that's amazing, and it's definitely helpful. And once again, I'd like to give a shout out to the RBY 7U community for their encouragement and their assistance in this. Now, I'm pretty sure I plugged it at the very beginning, but let me plug it again. If you want to, you can check out the RBY 7U Discord, as well as the official Smogon Other Tiers forum for 7U. If you want, there's going to be plenty of information on the latter. You're going to be able to find the replays, you're going to be able to find statistics, usage information, all that. And they actually plan on doing the teams and whatnot. It's going to be awesome. With all that said, folks, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope to see y'all again later. Until then,